They moved like predators in the dark, shaved heads glinting under broken streetlights, ink crawling across their skin like maps of violence. The gang didn't hunt alone. They prowled in packs, scanning for vulnerability. And tonight, their eyes locked onto two black men walking down a cracked sidewalk in South Crest Heights. From a distance, they looked like easy prey, but what the gang didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have known, was that these two men weren't random targets. They were brothers, twins, soldiers, battle-forged in deserts and jungles oceans away. Their names were Malcolm and Jalen Reed, and this wasn't their first fight. It wouldn't be their last. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world you're watching from, and what time it is right now. We're curious to know who's with us as this story unfolds. And if this is your kind of story, raw, real, and unflinching, make sure you hit subscribe, because what happens next will stay with you long after it ends. The street was quiet, almost too quiet, as Malcolm and Jalen walked side by side, their footsteps synchronized not out of intention, but instinct, years of combat making them move like one. "You sure about this detour?" Jalen muttered, adjusting the gym bag slung over his shoulder. "Could have stayed home. I had plans." Malcolm smirked. "Watching old fight footage doesn't count as plans, little brother." "By 6 minutes," Jalen shot back. Their banter carried them through the silence, but it couldn't mask the tension simmering just beneath the surface. For weeks now, their neighborhood had changed. Something was off. Reports whispered of brutal beatings, mostly black victims, often alone. The rumors were disturbing, but it was the pattern that chilled them. Every incident seemed coordinated, deliberate, strategic. "You think this bounty thing's real?" Jalen asked, voice low. "That someone's actually paying these guys to take people out?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Maria doesn't call me unless it's serious. She said this is bigger than street thugs. Organized, funded, and then voices, boots scraping concrete, a low chuckle ahead. They stopped walking. Instincts kicked in. From the alley, 5 men stepped into view, forming a semicircle. One of them, taller, broader than the rest, cracked his neck and sneered. "Well, well," he drawled, "2 for the price of 1. Ain't that a lucky night?" The leader's name would come later, Damon Knox, but in that moment he was just a threat. Malcolm and Jalen said nothing. Their eyes met. No fear. Just unspoken calculation. "Boss only wants 1 of you," Damon said, his tone like poison. "You pick who stays. Other walks away. Easy, right?" Jalen's fists clenched, but Malcolm stepped forward. Calm, controlled. "You can take your offer and shove it." The gang laughed, a hollow sound sharp with menace. "You don't know what you're walking into," Damon warned. "We run this neighborhood now." "No," Malcolm said coldly. "You just think you do." The first punch flew, wild and fast, but it never landed. Malcolm ducked, countered, and dropped the attacker with a single elbow to the temple. The fight exploded like gunfire. Jalen spun, swept the legs out from another, and drove his knee into the man's ribs. The rest hesitated. These weren't supposed to be fighters. They were supposed to bleed easy. But Malcolm and Jalen weren't bleeding. They were dismantling. "Who the hell are you?" one of the gang members shouted, backing up. Malcolm's voice cut through the air like a blade. "The wrong targets." One by one, the gang went down. When only Damon remained, bloodied and breathless, he spat on the ground and hissed, "This ain't over." Malcolm stepped closer. "No, it's just beginning." Because what they uncovered that night wasn't just a gang, it was a network, a bounty system engineered by power, fueled by hate. And the man behind it all was a ghost named Sterling Whitmore, a billionaire real estate mogul hiding behind policy, property, and paramilitary muscle. That night, Malcolm and Jalen didn't just fight back. They declared war, and the city of South Crest Heights would never be the same again. The silence that followed the street fight wasn't peace. It was tension, thick with unfinished business. Damon Knox had escaped into the shadows, limping, blood dripping from his split lip, but not broken. Not yet. Malcolm stood over one of the unconscious men, his breath steady but shallow, a trickle of blood on his cheek. "You good?" Jalen asked, rubbing his shoulder. "Better than him?" Malcolm muttered, nodding toward the man groaning on the pavement. The police would never come to this part of town, not for this. And even if they did, they'd only ask questions Malcolm wasn't ready to answer. "We need to talk to Nia," Malcolm said, already pulling his phone from his jacket. Jalen didn't argue. 15 minutes later, the brothers sat across from Detective Nia Carter in a nearly empty all-night diner, the buzz of an old neon sign flickering through the window. Nia wore a worn leather jacket, her dark curls pulled back tight, eyes sharp and exhausted. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You look like hell," she said, stirring her coffee. "You should see the other guys," Jalen said dryly. Nia didn't smile. "I've been tracking attacks like the one you just walked through. 5 in the last month. All black victims, all random, according to the official reports, but you and I both know better." Malcolm leaned in. "It's a bounty system, isn't it?" Nia exhaled slowly. "I didn't want to believe it at first. Thought maybe it was gang turf violence. But there's a pattern. Targeted removals. Not just beatdowns. Forced evictions, assaults, disappearances. And now I'm hearing whispers about payouts. Someone's putting money on heads." "Knox said his boss only needed one of us," Jalen said. "That confirms it." Nia's jaw clenched. "Then we need to find out who this boss is." Malcolm's eyes narrowed. "You already have a name." Nia hesitated. "I've heard rumors. One name keeps coming up in the background. Sterling Whitmore. He owns nearly half the redevelopment projects in the South Crest Zone. He's been buying up property, pushing out low-income tenants under the guise of cleaning up the neighborhood. "He's funding these attacks," Malcolm said, voice low. "Buying violence like it's just another line item in his development plan." "Maybe," Nia said, "but I don't have proof. And without proof, the department won't touch him. He's too rich, too connected." Malcolm and Jalen exchanged a look, one forged in war zones and forged again tonight in blood. "Then we'll get proof," Malcolm said. "We don't need a badge to get answers." Nia leaned forward, her voice hard. "Don't be reckless. This isn't like the field. You go after Whitmore without a plan, you'll disappear, and no one will ask why." "We're not scared of him," Jalen said. "That's the problem," Nia replied. She reached into her coat, sliding a crumpled napkin across the table. "That bar down on Pelham and 9th. I've seen a few of Knox's guys hang around there, real low-profile, off-grid place. If anyone knows where Knox is hiding, or what he's planning next, it's one of them." Malcolm pocketed the napkin. "Appreciate it." Nia held his gaze. "I'm not giving you this to start a war. I'm giving it to you because I trust you'll handle it smart." Jalen chuckled under his breath. "No promises." "Then make damn sure you don't need luck," Nia said, standing, "because luck runs out." After she left, the brothers paid their bill and stepped back into the cold night. The city felt heavier now. Every shadow seemed to watch them. Every silence hummed with threat. "What are we thinking?" Jalen asked, cracking his knuckles. Malcolm's voice was steady. "We find one of Knox's lieutenants, we squeeze, we get intel, and then we go straight to the top." Jalen nodded. "Old school extraction." "Exactly," Malcolm replied. "Just like Kandahar." They shared a quiet smirk, battle-hardened brothers stepping back into the fire. But this time the war wasn't across the ocean. It was here. In their streets, in their city. And someone had decided that people like them didn't belong. That someone was about to find out just how wrong he was. The bar on Pelham and 9th looked exactly like the kind of place you'd go if you didn't want to be found. Tucked between a pawn shop with flickering neon and a boarded-up laundromat, the building sagged under its own weight, its grimy windows barely holding back the pulse of dim yellow light from inside. Malcolm and Jalen parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, keeping their silhouettes low beneath the busted streetlights. "Place stinks like trouble," Jalen muttered, eyeing the fogged windows. "Good," Malcolm replied, tightening his jacket. Means we're close. They slipped inside, letting the heavy door creak shut behind them. The smell of old beer and stale cigarettes hit first, followed by the thrum of a jukebox playing a slow, bluesy tune no one was listening to. A few heads turned, just long enough to clock the newcomers, but no one spoke. The regulars knew better. In the far corner, a group of 5 men clustered around a table, all bald, broad-shouldered, and inked up. Their laughter was low, sharp at the edges. Jalen's eyes flicked over them. Knox's guys, no doubt. Malcolm nodded, leading them to a table along the back wall, their backs to the corner. From there, they could see the whole room. The bartender, a barrel-chested man with a nicotine-stained mustache, approached with a grunt. What'll it be? Just a beer, Malcolm said casually. Jalen gave a polite nod, masking the tension beneath his calm demeanor. As the bartender turned away, one of the men at the far table, the wiry one with a snake tattoo coiling up his neck, whispered something to his crew and stood. He grabbed his drink and swaggered over, his grin already sour. Don't see you two around here much, he said, voice oily. That a problem? Malcolm asked evenly. Not yet, the man smirked, eyes scanning them with slow intent. But we don't like strangers hanging around unless they're buying more than beer. Jalen tilted his head, matching the man's energy. Maybe we're just here for the music. Funny, Snake Neck replied, leaning in. You don't look like the joking type. You look like the kind who asks the wrong questions. And you look like someone with answers, Malcolm said, his tone darkening. The man's grin faltered for a moment. Who are you? People you shouldn't have seen on the street the other night, Malcolm said. Silence cracked between them. The man's hand twitched near his belt, but Jalen was faster, already on his feet, pushing the man back with a single, firm hand to the chest. Chairs scraped behind them. Knox's crew was rising. Easy, Malcolm said, lifting his hands just slightly, enough to signal restraint, not surrender. We're not here to start something, but if you want to finish it, we can do that too. Snake Neck glanced at his crew, then at the other patrons watching with wary eyes. After a tense beat, he raised both hands and stepped back. Follow me. He led them through a grimy hallway into a back room filled with crates, broken chairs, and a single light bulb swinging overhead. Talk fast, he snapped. We know Knox is planning something, Malcolm said. We know there's a list. Names, targets. We want the name behind the money. I don't know anything about a list, the man sneered. I just drink here. Jalen took a step forward, blocking the door. Wrong answer. Malcolm grabbed the man by the front of his jacket and slammed him against the wall. You've got one more chance before we stop being polite. The man squirmed, then spat toward the floor. Okay, there's a meeting. Tomorrow night, warehouse near the docks, 9th and Claymore. Knox will be there, maybe even the guy he answers to. Name, Malcolm demanded. I don't know it, the man hissed. They call him the architect. Big money, real estate guy, pays cash, doesn't show his face, but I heard one of the guys call him Whitmore. Malcolm released him and the man slumped to the floor, gasping. Sterling Whitmore, Jalen said grimly. This just got real. They left the bar in silence, slipping back into the cold night, adrenaline still humming in their veins. Tomorrow, they would step into the lion's mouth. And this time, they weren't just looking for a fight, they were looking to blow the whole system wide open. The next night, the air over Claymore Wharf hung heavy with fog and tension, a thick veil that swallowed light and sound alike. Malcolm and Jalen crouched behind a stack of rusted shipping containers, eyes locked on the dimly lit warehouse that loomed at the edge of the dock like a sleeping beast. The building looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows, sagging roof, paint peeling in long strips. But the faint glow seeping from inside told a different story. 2 guards at the front, Jalen whispered, nodding toward the men flanking the main door, and probably more inside. Malcolm adjusted the earpiece Naya had given them earlier that day. We go in through the side. Quiet, quick, eyes on Knox. If Whitmore's in there, we need evidence. Video, audio, anything we can feed to Nia. Copy that, Jalen said, cracking his knuckles. No unnecessary noise, Malcolm reminded. We're not here to brawl. Yet. They moved like shadows, skirting the outer wall of the warehouse until they reached a side entrance partially obscured by pallets and broken fencing. Malcolm disabled the security cam with a low-frequency jammer, then picked the lock with practiced ease. The door creaked open just enough to let them slip in. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous, the scent of oil and old wood started thick in the air. Overhead, industrial lights cast a jaundiced glow across the scene. Crates stacked high, folding chairs arranged in rough semicircles, and a cluster of men standing near a makeshift table draped in maps and blueprints. And there, at the center, stood Damon Knox, arms crossed, face bruised from their last encounter, his voice cutting through the air like broken glass. "We've been moving too slow," he barked. "Boss wants results. Tonight's a field test. We hit 3 targets, make examples. Then we scale." Malcolm's stomach turned as he pulled out a small camera from his jacket and aimed it through a gap in the crates. Jalen crouched beside him, eyes scanning the faces in the room. "You see Whitmore?" he asked. "Not yet," Malcolm whispered. "But if this is the setup, he's pulling strings from a safe distance." Knox continued, stabbing his finger at a marked neighborhood on the map. "This block here. Low-income housing, mostly black tenants. We clear it out, property values spike. Same playbook we used on Westbrook. Nobody wants to live next to what the boss calls undesirables." Jalen's fists clenched, but Malcolm held him back with a subtle shake of the head. "We get the recording," he whispered. "Then we act." Knox turned to one of his men. "And if anyone fights back?" The man grinned. "We make them disappear." "Just like the Reed twins should have," Knox muttered. "They embarrassed us. Boss was furious." Jalen leaned closer to Malcolm. "They're naming us. This just got personal." "Stay sharp," Malcolm replied. "We'll give them something to remember." Suddenly, the warehouse door slammed shut. One of the guards entered, breathless. "We've got movement outside," he warned. Knox stiffened. "How many?" "2, maybe more. Could be cops." "Get everyone on alert," Knox ordered. "Nobody leaves until we figure out who's watching." Malcolm cursed under his breath. "We're burned." "We move now," Jalen said, "or we don't move at all." In one fluid motion, the brothers rose from cover. Jalen shoved a stack of crates to the side, sending a loud crash through the warehouse. "Looking for us!" he shouted, stepping into view. Gasps erupted. Knox's eyes widened with fury. "You!" "Surprised?" Malcolm said, joining his brother. "You talk a big game, Damon. Let's see if you can back it up without a dozen goons hiding behind you." "Take them!" Knox roared. Chaos erupted. Men surged forward, weapons drawn, pipes, bats, chains. But Malcolm and Jalen moved like twin hurricanes. Jalen ducked under a wide swing, countered with a gut punch that dropped his attacker. Malcolm disarmed another with a spinning block and swept the man's legs out from under him. It wasn't a fair fight, it was a reckoning. But even as they fought, Malcolm kept glancing toward the table. The maps, the documents, proof. "Cover me!" he shouted. Jalen pivoted, shielding his brother as Malcolm dove for the table, grabbing the files and shoving them into his bag. A pipe missed his head by inches. He turned, elbowed the attacker, and scrambled back toward Jalen. "Let's move!" "Back door!" Jalen yelled, pointing. They charged, crashing through the exit into the night. Behind them, voices roared. Footsteps thundered, but the brothers didn't stop running. They had what they came for. Now came the real battle, exposing Sterling Whitmore to the world. The alley behind the warehouse stank of diesel, rust, and old rain. But to Malcolm and Jalen, it smelled like survival. They tore through the shadows, lungs burning, feet pounding over broken pavement as shouts echoed behind them. "Left!" Malcolm called, grabbing Jalen's sleeve and pulling him down a side path that sloped into an overgrown drainage tunnel. They ducked low beneath crumbling concrete and crouched in the dark, listening. Footsteps pounded past the opening, fading into the distance. The brothers exchanged a glance, breathless, bruised, but unbroken. "You got it?" Jalen asked, voice ragged. Malcolm unzipped the side of his jacket and held up a battered envelope stuffed with maps, floor plans, and coded lists. Names, locations, schedules. It's all in here. Then we just made ourselves target number 1, Jalen muttered, pushing off the wall. Again. They waited 5 more minutes before emerging onto a side street and disappearing into the city like smoke. The streets of South Crest were quieter now. Too quiet. Every flickering street lamp, every parked car, every half-lit window felt like an eye watching them. It was nearly 2 a.m. when they slipped into their apartment through the rear entrance. Malcolm dropped the evidence on the table while Jalen double-locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. "How long do you think we have before they realize what we took?" Jalen asked. "Not long," Malcolm said, flipping through the stolen files. "These aren't just random plans. This is systemic. Timelines, addresses, notes about who to hit and when. This is a machine, and Whitmore built it to run quietly." "So, what's our move?" Jalen asked, pacing. "We take it to Nia," Malcolm said. "Tonight. She said if we could tie anything back to Whitmore, she could move on him. This is the break we needed." Jalen stopped pacing, nodding. "Then let's go now, before they start burning paper." 15 minutes later, they stood outside a quiet diner off Lexington, where Nia Carter sometimes pulled late-night surveillance shifts. She sat in a booth near the back, hunched over a laptop with a cup of coffee gone cold beside her. Her eyes narrowed the moment they entered. "You two look like hell." "Feel worse," Malcolm replied, sliding into the booth. Jalen sat across from him and dropped the envelope between them. "This is what Damon Knox didn't want us to find." Nia opened it, her expression hardening with every page. Maps marked with red X's. Spreadsheets listing addresses and ethnic demographics. Payment logs in code. One name repeated over and over in the margins. SW. "This is it," Nia said, voice low. "This is what I've been trying to prove for 6 months." "Sterling Whitmore," Malcolm said. "It's him. We know it. Now we need to make the rest of the world see it too." "He's not going to go down easy," Nia warned. "He's got lawyers, lobbyists, half the city council in his back pocket. He's got violence too," Jalen added. "And Knox is still out there with a crew ready to die for this guy." Nia closed the folder. "If I bring this in, they'll try to shut me down before it hits the chain of command. We need more. Something airtight." "What about his private retreat?" Malcolm asked. "I've heard whispers, off-grid, where he meets with his top people. No phones, no recordings." "You think there's evidence there?" Nia asked. "It's the only place he feels untouchable," Jalen said. "If he's keeping records, it's there." "Then we need to hit it before he knows we're coming," Malcolm said, "before he burns the whole place down to cover his trail." Nia hesitated, then pulled a flash drive from her coat pocket. "This has tracking logs for Whitmore's fleet. If we're lucky, we'll find the retreat on here." "What about you?" Jalen asked. "Can you hold the line while we get what we need?" "I'll stall the DA, leak just enough to rattle Whitmore's people, but not enough for him to bolt," she said. "But don't take too long. You're not ghosts anymore. He knows your names." Malcolm took the drive. "Then we'll make sure he remembers them for the rest of his life." They left the diner with dawn bleeding into the horizon and war echoing in their bones. They had a location to find, a fortress to breach, and a monster to expose. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about justice. The road to Whitmore's retreat twisted through the wooded hills west of the city, far from the skyline and surveillance. It was the kind of place designed to disappear. No signage, no official records, just a long gravel path hidden behind a fake construction gate and a small plaque that simply read, "Private Access." Malcolm and Jalen parked their car half a mile out, leaving it behind a thicket of trees as the wind rustled branches above them like whispers warning them back. Dressed in black, with gloves tight and gear light, they moved silently along the forest's edge, guided by the GPS coordinates Nia had extracted from Whitmore's fleet logs. "You sure about this?" Jalen asked as they crouched behind a fallen log near a clearing. "This is where ghosts vanish." "That's exactly why he thinks no one will come," Malcolm replied. pulling a small pair of binoculars from his pocket. Through the lens, a sprawling estate emerged, modern, cold, and clinical. Glass and steel framed in silence. A sleek driveway wrapped around the main house, flanked by motion sensor lights and 2 roving security guards with military posture and tactical vests. A separate building, a smaller structure, sat off to the left, less glamorous, more utilitarian. "That's our target," Malcolm whispered, nodding toward it. "Probably his office. The main house is for show." They waited until one of the guards turned a corner, then dashed low across the clearing, slipping through the shadows like smoke. Jalen picked the lock in under 15 seconds while Malcolm scanned the tree line behind them. The door opened with a soft click, and they entered the office building without a sound. Inside, the air was still, colder than it should have been. The hallway stretched ahead, carpeted and lined with abstract art, expensive, impersonal. A red light blinked faintly above a corner camera. Malcolm pulled out the signal jammer again and activated it. "We've got maybe 2 minutes," he said. "Make it count." They moved quickly, sweeping the hall, checking rooms. Most were empty. Storage, a lounge, a meeting space, but at the far end they found it. An oak door, heavier than the others, locked with a biometric panel. Jalen pulled out a tool set, but before he could start, Malcolm found a small metal box beside the door. He pried it open, revealing a manual override slot. "Old habits die hard," Malcolm muttered, inserting a universal keycard. The light turned green. The door swung open. Inside, the office was sleek, cold, and precise. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley, a glass desk, 2 computer monitors, and a row of black filing cabinets along the wall. "Start with the cabinets," Malcolm said, moving to the computer. Jalen cracked open drawer after drawer, pulling files. Property acquisitions, coded payment records, maps marked with red zones labeled Priority Clearance. Meanwhile, Malcolm inserted a flash drive into the computer, copying everything as quickly as the system allowed. "He's been tracking the whole operation digitally," Malcolm whispered. "Target logs, names, payment disbursements, it's all here. Whitmore didn't just fund the system, he architected it." "We've got enough to bury him," Jalen said, stuffing folders into his pack. But before they could finish, a security light outside flicked red. Then came the footsteps. Fast, heavy. "Time's up," Malcolm said, yanking the drive and slipping it into a chest pocket. "Back exit." They darted out at the side door just as the main one burst open behind them. Shouts followed. "Hey, they're in the building!" Malcolm and Jalen sprinted toward the tree line, zigzagging between trimmed hedges and outdoor lighting. Behind them, security scrambled, shouting into radios, flashlights slicing through the dark. A shot cracked in the distance. Warning, not aimed. Yet. "Left," Jalen shouted, diving down a gully. They rolled down the incline, tumbling through leaves and branches, landing hard but upright. Malcolm grabbed a smoke pellet from his belt and hurled it behind them. A plume of gray erupted, buying them precious seconds. "There's a footbridge ahead," Jalen called, spotting the wooden beams just beyond a low ridge. They sprinted across it, and once on the other side they vanished into the thicket, using the forest to swallow their trail. By the time the guards reached the bridge, the brothers were gone. An hour later, Malcolm and Jalen sat in silence in their apartment, bloodied and exhausted, the flash drive between them on the table. "We got it," Jalen said, voice hoarse. "We have everything." "Now," Malcolm said, eyes steady, "we burn the Empire down." The sky was still dark when Malcolm and Jalen pulled up outside the precinct, the city lights casting a muted orange glow over cracked pavement and chain-link fencing. The evidence sat between them on the dashboard, a single flash drive, no bigger than a lighter, but heavy with truth. Malcolm turned it over in his fingers, his expression hard. "You ready for this?" Jalen asked, his voice quieter than usual. "Once we hand this over, there's no putting it back in the bottle." "We didn't come this far to flinch now," Malcolm said, stepping out of the car. They entered through the back, avoiding the front desk and the questions that came with it. Nia met them in the side corridor, her jacket already on, badge clipped, eyes bloodshot but focused. "You have it?" she asked. Malcolm nodded and passed her the drive. She didn't speak, just led them straight to the forensics lab where her tech team had been waiting, bleary-eyed and tense, fingers hovering over keyboards. The moment the flash drive was plugged in, the room seemed to hum with electricity. Files opened, screens filled with maps, transaction logs, video call snapshots, even private memos signed by Sterling Whitmore himself. The final nail came in the form of a spreadsheet listing payouts to independent security contractors for target removals, cross-referenced with neighborhoods where Black and immigrant families had recently vanished under suspicious circumstances. "Jesus," the tech whispered. "This is a war map." "It's a cleansing campaign," Nia said coldly, "and now we've got the blueprint." She turned to Malcolm and Jalen. "You two just gave us everything we need." "Then use it," Malcolm said, "before he moves again." "We're not waiting," Nia replied. "My team's already en route to Whitmore's downtown office. We serve the warrant, we freeze his accounts, we get him in cuffs before he can bury another document." "You'll need backup," Jalen said. "He's got muscle. We've got uniforms, and this time the city's watching." Less than an hour later, the raid began. Squad cars surrounded Whitmore's mirrored tower as the sun began to rise behind it. A PR rep in a suit tried to stall them in the lobby, but Nia pushed past without blinking, badge raised, warrant in hand. "Sterling Whitmore is under investigation for conspiracy, racketeering, and state-sponsored hate crimes," she announced. "Move aside." Upstairs, Whitmore was already packing. His private elevator was waiting, a sleek escape route down to an idling black SUV in the underground garage. But as he zipped the case shut, filled with encrypted drives and offshore banking records, the door behind him slammed open. "Don't," Malcolm said, stepping in first, followed by Jalen and 2 officers. "It's over." Whitmore turned, not startled, furious. "This is trespassing," he hissed. "You've got no authority here." "We do now," Nia said, appearing behind them. "You left a trail, Sterling. You wrote it in blood and filed it like taxes. And now you're going to answer for every name on that list." Whitmore's face contorted. "You think you're heroes? You think any of this changes the city? You're insects." "Insects just tore down your empire," Malcolm said. "Now get on your knees." For a moment, Whitmore resisted. Then, as the handcuffs clicked shut, something inside him broke. Not from pain, but disbelief. That it was happening. That it could happen. That justice, so long absent from his world, had finally arrived. Cameras outside flashed as he was led down the steps in chains. Reporters shouted questions. Protesters chanted. A movement bloomed on the sidewalk, small but growing, loud but resolute. Malcolm and Jalen stood across the street, watching it all unfold, shoulders squared against the wind. "Think he'll talk?" Jalen asked. "He'll try to make a deal," Malcolm said. "They always do, but it won't save him." "So what now?" Jalen asked. Malcolm looked at this crowd, at the people finding courage in the truth. "Now we rebuild, and we stay ready, because men like Whitmore don't disappear. They replicate." Jalen nodded, that familiar fire in his eyes. "Then let's be the firewall." The brothers turned and walked into the morning, their work unfinished, but their message clear. You can run a system of hate, but you'll never outrun justice. What do you think about Malcolm and Jalen's fight for justice? Did this story strike a chord with you? Drop your thoughts, questions, or even your own experiences in the comments below. We read every one of them. And if you want to see more stories like this, powerful, raw, and unfiltered, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter. Your voice matters here. Let's keep the conversation going.